day long. The flower pot man. The flower pot man.
Mud, glorious mud. It was a wet, rainy day in the garden, and Bill and Ben were not happy about the rain. Flubber-dubber rain, sighed Bill. Flubber-dubber, wet, 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 sighed Ben. Cheer up, you two. I like the rain as it's good for my roots, said Weed. Why don't you go and shelter somewhere? Flubber okay, Weed, said Bill and Ben, and they climbed out of their flower pots and ran off. The flower pot men were desperate to get out of the rain, so they decided to shelter in the shed as it was the closest to their flower pots. Bill and Ben climbed onto the workbench and walked over to the window. Flubber dear, oh dear, sighed Bill. Flubber dubber lub, sighed Ben. But the flower pot men weren't miserable for long, because very soon the rain stopped. Woohoo! They cheered. Bill and Ben high-fived each other, ran to the edge of the workbench, jumped off, and ran out of the shed. Even though it had stopped raining, everything was still soaking wet. Flubber dubber play? Asked Bill. Flubber dubber tig, suggested Ben. He wanted to play tig. Flubber you're it, Bill, said Ben as he tigged Bill and ran off towards Thistle's corner. Oh, Flubber, come here, laughed Bill as he ran off after Ben. Thistle was asleep until Ben rushed past her. Flubber can't catch me! What? Said Thistle in shock. Then Bill rushed past her. Flubber, yes I can! Thistle grumpily looked at the direction in which Bill and Ben had run. Silly fast flower pot men, she said as she went back to sleep. Ben was running so fast that he ran into a puddle and started slipping all over the place on the wet ground. Whoa, Flubber lippy, said Ben. Bill skidded to a stop and saw his brother slipping about. Oh, Flob, he said. Flubber, Bill! Flubber, help! Cried Ben. He slipped towards the vegetable patch at the end of the garden and fell face first in the mud with a splat. Ben slowly sat up with a face full of mud. Flubber yuck! Groaned Ben as he wiped the mud off his face. Ha 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 ha! Flubber muddy, Ben! Laughed Bill. Ben was so annoyed at Bill that he decided to pay him back, so he went through the door to the vegetable garden. When Bill stopped laughing, he noticed that Ben had gone. Oh, Flubber Ben gone? Wondered Bill, and he started calling for him. Flubber Ben! Flubber, where are you? Ben peeped round the door and then came out holding 2 mud balls. Flub! He said, and he threw the first mud ball at Bill's bottom. Oh! Flubber that! Exclaimed Bill as he jumped in fright. Flew! Said Ben. Bill turned around just as Ben threw the second mud ball in his face. Eh? Oh, Flubber Ben! He groaned. Now it was Ben's turn to laugh. Ha 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 ha! Flubber muddy, Bill, he said. Bill was so annoyed at Ben that he decided to throw mud balls at him. Bill ran through the door to the vegetable garden and came back holding several mud balls which he threw at Ben. Oh! Flubber Bill! Oh! Flubber dub it! Oh! Oh! Flubber right! Oh! Flubber do! Oh! Come play it! Oh! That game! Oh! Said Ben. He made several mud balls from the mud in the vegetable patch and started throwing them at Bill. Soon the flower pot men were running round the garden throwing mud balls at each other. The more they threw, the muddier they got. Later, Bill and Ben, who were now completely covered in mud, threw their last mud balls. Bill's one hit a nearby watering can, and Ben's one hit Thistle, waking her up again. "Whoa! What? Now what?" she said in shock. Then Thistle saw something that shocked her even more, and said, "What on earth is all this mess?" Bill and Ben looked at each other, confused. "Flubber what mess?" they said. Then they noticed what Thistle had seen, and screamed in horror. While Bill and Ben were having their mud fight, they had accidentally covered the whole garden in mud! Bill and Ben put their heads in their hands as they were so ashamed. "Oh, Flob," they said. Bill and Ben knew immediately they needed to clean everything up. "Flob," they said as they shook hands. Bill and Ben went to the clothesline pole at the end of the garden. Then Bill had an idea. "Aha! Flob an idea." He and Ben could wash everything from the man who works in the garden's hose. Bill pointed to the longest hose which was connected to the tap, and Ben patted him on the back. "Flubber brilliant, Bill," he said. First, the flower men needed to clean themselves up, so Bill and Ben ran over to the hose. Bill climbed onto the cold frame and turned on the tap. Then water came swooshing out of the hose. "Ooh, Flubber water," said Ben. He picked up the hose and aimed it at Bill, soaking him. "Oh, Flubber, Ben," spluttered Bill. "Flubber clean soon," chuckled Ben. Soon Bill was clean again. "Ah, Flubber better. Flubber your turn, Ben," he said. Bill jumped off the cold frame, picked up the hose, and aimed it at Ben, soaking him. "Oh, Flubber, thank you, Bill," spluttered Ben. "Flubber, no problem, Ben," said Bill. Soon Ben was clean again. "Woohoo!" he said. Now that Bill and Ben were clean again, it was time to clean up the garden. First, Bill and Ben sprayed the end of the garden with the hose. Then they sprayed Thistle's corner, including Thistle herself, waking her up yet again. "Oh, not again," she said. "Flubber doing, Thistle," said Bill. "Flubber can't stop," said Ben. The flower pot men sprayed the shed, the bottom of the garden, the fence, the vegetable garden, and the cellar door. Now that the garden was clean again, Bill and Ben could now turn the tap off. "Flubber tap off," said Bill, as he climbed onto the cold frame and turned the tap off. "Flubber job done," said Ben. The flower pot men were glad that their mud cleaning was over, and decided to play in the cellar to reward themselves. Ben walked off, Bill jumped off the cold frame and followed him. But when Bill and Ben got to the cellar door, they saw something and gasped. During their mud fight, Bill and Ben had thrown mud balls so high that they hit the top of the drain pipe. They had seen 2 splodges there. "Oh, Flob!" said Bill and Ben. They knew that they were too small to spray water with the hose that high. But luckily, Bill and Ben knew exactly how to get to the top of the drain pipe without leaning over the gutter. "Flubber balloon!" They had decided to use their hot air balloon to get up to the drain pipe, so they went to get some cleaning equipment. Bill and Ben arrived at the end of the garden with 2 buckets which they had found in the shed. Bill disconnected the hose from the tap and put 1 bucket under it. Ben climbed onto the cold frame, turned the tap on, and filled the bucket with water. Once the first bucket was filled, Bill moved it out of the way and put the other bucket under the tap, so that one got filled as well. When both buckets were filled, Ben turned the tap off, jumped off the cold frame, picked up 1 bucket, and ran off. Bill picked up the other bucket and followed him. Bill and Ben arrived at the corner of the fence where their hot air balloon was parked, put their buckets in the basket of their balloon, and climbed in. There was an anchor attached to a wooden box. Bill pulled the anchor up and into the basket. Then the balloon rose into the sky. "Flubber up we go," said Bill. "Flubbered up into the sky," said Ben. The balloon got to the top of the fence and flew towards Thistle's corner. As the balloon flew closer to the drainpipe, Bill was ready to attach the anchor to one of the branches of the tree. "Flob, flew, flee," he counted, and he threw the anchor towards one of the branches of the tree, and it wrapped itself around it. "Flub, a perfect shot," smiled Ben. It was a perfect shot. The balloon was right in front of the drainpipe, and the anchor was nicely secured on the branch. "Flob, flob it over clean," said Bill. Now it was time to clean the drainpipe. Bill picked up one bucket and threw water over one mud splodge. Ben picked up the other bucket and threw water over the other mud splodge. Now the drainpipe was as clean as a whistle. "Woohoo!" cheered Bill and Ben as they high-fived each other. Bill was about to pull in the anchor when Ben tapped him on the shoulder. "Flubber Bill," he said. "Hmm? Flubber, what is it, Ben?" asked Bill. Ben whispered something to Bill that made him snigger. "Flubber brilliant," he said. There was still some water in the buckets, and Bill and Ben knew exactly what to do with it. Bill picked up his bucket and poured the water over Thistle, who had given up on sleeping. "Oh, I don't believe it," grumbled Thistle. She looked up, and Ben poured the water from his bucket over her. "Oh, you couple of good-for-nothings," she said. Bill and Ben laughed as they pulled in the anchor, and the balloon flew back in the other direction. As the balloon got to the fence, Bill picked up the anchor and threw it over the basket so it attached itself to the wooden box. The balloon floated back down to the ground and landed with a gentle bump. "Flubber, good job, Ben," said Bill. "And Flubber, good job, Bill," said Ben. The Flowerpot shook hands to say well done, climbed out of the basket, and ran back to the bottom of the garden. At the bottom of the garden, Weed saw Bill and Ben coming back. "Hello, you two," she said. "Flubberweed," said Bill and Ben as they yawned and stretched, then climbed into their flower pots. "I can see that you've had a busy day," said Weed. "Oh, Flubber, yes," said Bill and Ben as they popped down into their flower pots. They saw no chance of them playing in the cellar now. Their mud cleaning had made them very tired, and all they wanted to do now was sleep.